Good day. Here are the top stories for Thursday, July 24th, 2025. We begin in Washington, where Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard alleged at a White House press briefing that the Obama administration deliberately politicized intelligence to create the narrative of Russian interference in the 2016 presidential election. Gabbard's claims are based on a newly declassified trove of documents from the U.S. intelligence community. Speaking to reporters, she stated, "There is irrefutable evidence that details how President Obama and his national security team directed the creation of an intelligence community assessment that they knew was false." She further alleged they promoted a contrived narrative that Russia interfered specifically to help Donald Trump win the election, selling it to the public as truth. The declassified materials reportedly suggest that U.S. intelligence agencies did not possess direct information indicating that Russian President Vladimir Putin was actively trying to support Trump's 2016 campaign. Gabbard emphasized that these documents have been referred to the Department of Justice and the FBI to investigate any potential criminal implications. She added, "The evidence that we have found and that we have released directly point to President Obama leading the manufacturing of this intelligence assessment." In response, a spokesperson for former President Barack Obama issued a sharp rebuke, labeling the accusations as bizarre, ridiculous, and a weak attempt at distraction. The spokesperson asserted that nothing in the newly released documents undermines the widely accepted conclusion of Russian interference, a conclusion also supported by a 2020 report from the Senate Intelligence Committee, which was then chaired by now Secretary of State Marco Rubio. The spokesperson's statement concluded by saying, "Out of respect for the office of the presidency, our office does not normally dignify the constant nonsense and misinformation flowing out of this White House with a response. But these claims are outrageous enough to merit one." Staying with major legal challenges, a federal appeals court has upheld a nationwide injunction against President Donald Trump's executive order aimed at ending birthright citizenship. In a 2-1 decision, a panel on the 9th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals affirmed a lower court's ruling that the order is unconstitutional. The executive order sought to reinterpret the 14th Amendment, which grants citizenship to all persons born in the United States. The administration has argued that this clause should not apply to the U.S.-born children of non-citizens or undocumented immigrants. However, the court's majority opinion was unequivocal, stating, "The district court correctly concluded that the executive order's proposed interpretation, denying citizenship to many persons born in the United States, is unconstitutional. We fully agree." This ruling from the 9th Circuit follows a similar decision from a federal judge in New Hampshire who also blocked the plan. The consistent opposition in the lower courts now sets a clear path for the administration to appeal the issue to the Supreme Court, which could lead to a landmark decision on one of the foundational principles of American citizenship. From a challenge to the 14th Amendment, we turn to a case centered on the First Amendment in Tennessee. A federal judge has permanently blocked a key provision of a state law that made it a crime for an adult to help a minor obtain an out-of-state abortion without parental consent. The law, enacted in 2024, was known for prohibiting what it called abortion trafficking of a minor. U.S. Circuit Judge Julia Gibbons, who was brought in to hear the case, specifically took issue with the law's recruitment provision. This section criminalized providing information to a minor about how to get a legal abortion in another state, or helping them make travel arrangements. In her ruling, Judge Gibbons found that this provision constitutes impermissible viewpoint discrimination because it prohibits speech encouraging lawful abortion while allowing speech discouraging lawful abortion. She wrote that such discrimination is rarely tolerated by the First Amendment. However, the judge did not strike down the entire law. She let stand the portions that criminalize the physical transportation of a minor across state lines for an abortion or harboring a minor for that purpose. The judge also rejected the plaintiff's claim that the law was unconstitutionally vague. The case was brought by Democratic State Representative Afton Bain and a Nashville attorney. The Tennessee Attorney General is expected to appeal the decision to the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals. Turning now to national security, officials have confirmed that Chinese state-sponsored hackers breached the U.S. National Nuclear Security Administration, the agency responsible for the nation's nuclear weapons stockpile. The Department of Energy confirmed the cyber attack on Wednesday, stating that the intrusion was carried out by exploiting a previously unknown vulnerability in Microsoft's SharePoint software. A Department of Energy spokesperson told Fox News Digital that, at this time, the agency is not aware of any sensitive or classified information having been stolen. The impact was reportedly limited because the vulnerability primarily affects organizations that run SharePoint on their own local networks. The Department of Energy largely uses Microsoft's cloud-based services, and as a result, officials say only a very small number of systems were impacted and are currently being restored. Microsoft has identified 2 hacking groups backed by the Chinese Communist Party, known as Linen Typhoon and Violet Typhoon, as being behind the global campaign, which has reportedly affected at least 400 victims worldwide. When asked about the hack, a Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson said he was not aware of the specifics, but stated that China opposes all hacking activities. The breach comes as Microsoft faces increased scrutiny over its security, having recently vowed to stop using China-based engineers for some Defense Department projects amid espionage concerns. Finally, back in Washington, a bipartisan group of lawmakers is taking aim at the popular Medicare Advantage program, saying it is plagued by problems that need to be fixed. During a recent hearing of the House Ways and Means Subcommittee, members from both parties expressed deep frustration with the privately run alternative to traditional Medicare. While acknowledging the program's popularity, they cited a growing list of concerns, including high rates of prior authorization denials for necessary medical care, significant delays in payments to doctors and hospitals, and runaway costs that don't seem to correlate with better health outcomes. Subcommittee Chairman Vern Buchanan, a Republican from Florida, summed up the sentiment stating, "We're spending $5 trillion as a country. It seems like we're getting sicker, and we're spending a lot more money." Lawmakers were clear that their goal is not to dismantle the program, which provides coverage for tens of millions of seniors, but to reform it. They want to improve federal oversight and ensure the program fulfills its original promise of providing efficient, holistic care for beneficiaries without creating undue burdens for patients and providers.